Today, we're with Stuart at Margins Insurance. Margins Insurance has been established for over 40 years. We're discussing the importance of business insurance, but also the rocky road ahead for many businesses coming out of the COVID pandemic. And we're discussing how Margins Insurance can help you going forward. Today, we've got Stuart at Margins Insurance with ourselves. Stuart, could you just tell us a little bit about Margins Insurance, what you do and your background?
Yeah, so Margins itself has been going for almost 50 years. It started in 1977, but probably the last 10 years, it's been quite a sleepy type of company, not particularly dynamic. I had the opportunity to buy Margins in early 2020. I've been in insurance myself for 30 odd years, and I've built up quite a loyal client base. And when this opportunity came along to buy the existing business of Margins, I thought it was a great opportunity for me.
Yeah,
obviously,
fantastic.
buying a business in March 2020 with COVID wasn't it was a
Not
bit
an
of a
ideal
stretch.
time, really.
Well, it actually worked out pretty well for us, which we'll come on to.
Yeah.
But I've transformed the business more from a business that did a lot of car and house insurance and a bit of commercial to the business that it is now, which is predominantly a commercial insurance broker with a bit of car and house insurance as well. So we serve, we arrange the insurances for an awful lot of businesses, small and medium-sized businesses around this area.
So have you switched the model on its head technically, what it was previously as a business?
Pretty much, yeah. My background for the past 20 odd years, 25 years has been solely commercial insurance. So whether that's property, liability, fleets, all the various aspects of business insurance. That's what I've done. I've worked in sales capacity, I've worked in a director level, and I've always wanted to actually own my own business outright. So when this opportunity came along, I thought we'd take the existing business as it was and then flip it or more, grow it. So I brought in all my commercial business into the company. So we're very much a commercial insurance.
And if you've still got that local, loyal customer base, ultimately, you've just basically added on top of that with your client base.
That's it. So I think 95% of our business is within a 10-mile radius of the office.
Okay.
So pretty much across the M65 corridor.
Yeah.
But even then, of that 95%, I'd say 80% of that is pretty much Burnley-ish.
Yeah.
We've got a handful of clients out of area, like London, Liverpool, Birmingham, but that's not really our patch. There's a reason why we have those clients in those areas, that they are connected to the northwest somehow. But yeah, we're very much an East Lancs kind of north of Manchester.
And
type.
do you like to keep it that way, and the fact that obviously you can be face-to-face, ultimately, as well, with a lot of your clients?
Yeah, I really like the face-to-face side of it. The relationship you get with your clients is a lot stronger, and I try and physically see all my clients as much as I can.
So coming from a position of purchasing the company, how has that affected your lifestyle as an individual or a business owner?
Well, I bought it in early 2020. I've never actually owned a business before. I've worked at fairly senior levels, so I'm familiar with a lot of the concepts.
Yeah.
But dealing with the likes of HMRC, dealing with the FCA, and then having to deal with the accounts and the finance and all the non-insurance side of it, it was quite exciting actually, because it was something I wasn't familiar with. But I didn't have any choice. I had to pay the bills, so you just embrace it really.
I think dealing with people like the FCA and HMRC, that's a job on its own.
Yeah.
Ultimately. Never mind running your business.
The FCA are incredibly demanding, difficult.
Yeah. And are you finding that's got more challenging since the pandemic or before the pandemic, or is it just the way they are?
I think it's just the way they are. The pandemic hasn't necessarily affected the way they operate, but the FCA in particular are asking for more and more documentation and more things around our finances and compliance and audit. I'm not a big fan of the compliance and audit side of things. I'm more an insurance guy and more of a sales guy, but it's not optional. You have to do it.
No, and I think from an FCA perspective, they want and need that from their compliance perspective, and make sure customers are covered as well at the same time, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So I do get it from their point of view, but as a business owner, it can be very, very difficult ultimately. Do you see that changing within your business? Do you think that you're going to get additional support and grow your business in that side of it, where you end up going to get maybe somebody full-time doing your compliance for you?
I kind of do already have someone because even though we're an independent insurance broker and I have the ultimate say on what goes on, I do outsource a lot of the non-insurance work. So there's a company I do already use for client money handling and for compliance and audit. I pay them a monthly fee, but they're the experts at it. I just do as they tell me.
Yeah. And you're expert at what you're doing. You're advised on insurance, and that's what you're good at, and that's technically how it should work.
That's
ultimately. And coming back to yourself a little bit, I mean, obviously owning your business and having staff and doing the day-to-day grind. Ultimately, how do you keep yourself motivated within your business?
I thrive off positivity. When you meet negative people, they tend to drive you down, and positive people push you upwards. So I'm a member of a couple of local networking groups, and generally those type of groups are full of positive, similar like-minded
so obviously
people.
we're both part of one group in particular. And it's very positive for business owners and directors. Because when you're talking as a business owner, you can't always talk to your staff about certain things.
Exactly.
And so if you've got like-minded people within a room, ultimately, and you're publishing your issues, your problems in the business, everybody's had that pain at some point, ultimately. So then obviously people helping you out and helping each other out within that particular group we go to, it's great. It's fantastic, really.
It is, yeah. So I get a lot out of that. I am a positive person. I generally turn negativity away, but there are a lot of things in the business that can get you down, whether it's financial, or whether it's clients or compliance or whatever. You have to deal with that, but I try as much as I can to surround myself with positive people, whether that's through networking or whether that's through customers.
Do you do anything in your daily routine to keep you positive?
I think I just have a pretty good attitude, really. I'm an optimist. I always when a challenge is thrown at you, I always look at it as a challenge as an opportunity. So I don't get down by challenges. I don't get upset by them. I think, well, a challenge is an opportunity for me to make something good out of this.
I think it depends what kind of person you are. Now, I thrive by challenges. When my back up against the wall, I would normally, I do well in them circumstances, and I always need something to push me and drive me onto the next level.
That's it.
Ultimately. So I think you've got to have your own personal goals as well. But coming back to the business itself, what makes you so unique?
So there are a lot of insurance brokers dotted throughout Lancashire, and most of them, to be fair, are pretty good. We all sell insurance, that's a given, but ultimately we're providing a service, and there are different levels of service. What do people mean by service? What makes us unique? I think the only thing I can honestly say, I'm personally contactable, and I say this tongue-in-cheek just a little bit, but I'm contactable 24/7. Now, people say, well, if we phone you at 3 o'clock in the morning, are you going to answer the phone? I probably am, and that has happened where people have contacted me at strange, bizarre hours. If someone contacts me out of the 9 to 5, because they need something at that time.
But there you go. That's your uniqueness.
Well,
because
I do that, and it's not a problem for me.
Because a big corporate establishment, you're not going to get on the end of the phone with somebody at that time of the day.
Well, if someone's insured through, say, someone like Aon, who are a massive global broker, and there are many like Aon, it's 0800 dum dum dum, and then you're through to various different people to get through, and then it's 15 minutes to get through. If you phone me, you get through to me immediately. And I try to offer that to as many customers as I can.
So do you want to just give me a little bit of an oversight of how business insurance works and what type of business insurance they are ultimately?
So when you look at any business, there's a building usually that the people are in. Sometimes that's owned by the occupant, or it can be in a pension fund, but the building itself has to be insured, just like your house insurance.
Yeah.
And obviously when you look through the building, whether it's a factory, an engineering plant, an office block, there's all the fixtures and fittings and contents. So they're kind of the obvious things that people look at to insure against fire and flood and theft and so on. But then obviously when you look deeper with a business, if a business is unable to trade from those premises because there's an explosion there or a fire, there's a period of time where the income's not there. It could be 6 months, 12 months, or even 3 years. So it's important that they have business interruption insurance against the likes of fire and flood and so on. And it's down to me to calculate the best way of arranging the BI cover, the business interruption cover. There's different ways of doing that, we can come on to. And then most businesses have employees, not all, but it's important to have public liability, products liability if you're selling a product, and employer's liability. Of those, the only thing that's legally required is employer's liability. Yeah. All the other things are optional, believe it or not, but it is a legal requirement to have employer's liability. Yeah. And that's against any injuries to members of the public, members of staff, or deaths, or diseases, or illnesses, those type of things. Yeah. So they're kind of the obvious things that a business has. But then, of course, there's things like credit insurance if customers of yours go under. There's vehicle insurance, in particular fleet insurance, which you do a lot of. So a fleet typically is where a company would have 4 or 5 vehicles typically, up to many vehicles, vans and cars. It's a lot better to arrange it on a fleet basis. And then there's cyber. So cyber insurance 15 years ago didn't exist, no one had heard of it, but there's an awful lot of clever criminals out there who can hack into your systems and steal data and money. So that's something we do quite a bit of now, cyber. Directors and officers liability. The list goes on. I mean, D&O, directors and officers, is protecting the individual directors themselves rather than...
I know that quite well, to be fair, from personal experience.
So the list goes on, really, about business insurance, whether it's an engineering company, a manufacturing plant, a wholesaler, a retailer, hospitality trade. They all have insurance, or they all ought to have it.
Yeah. So obviously, from your clientele, it doesn't really matter what they do as long as they're a business ultimately. Obviously, I know you do personal as well at the same time, but predominantly your business. But it doesn't really matter what they do. You're like a one-stop shop for any kind of business ultimately. Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, there's areas I quite like because I'm maybe personally a bit more interested in it, and there's areas I'm not so keen on. But yeah, ultimately, it's a requirement for pretty much every business, whether you're a sole trader or a PLC.
Okay. So the next point I want to touch on is business interruption insurance. Now, there's been a lot of news about business interruption insurance, especially what's happened with the recent pandemic and how businesses were and were not insured, ultimately. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a breakdown of what business interruption insurance is?
Yeah, so business interruption, I'll call it BI.
Yeah.
So there's a few different ways of arranging this. You can either arrange to insure yourself for loss of gross profit, loss of revenue, loss of income, and then there's one that's called increased costs of working or additional increased costs of working. Yeah. So I'll just do a very brief summary. Most people insure on a loss of gross profit basis. So if you have a factory and you have a turnover and a gross profit, if there's a loss at that factory, I'll pick on a factory. For a period of time, you are physically unable to manufacture that product and supply it to your customers.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So during that period of time, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, and sometimes it could be 2 or 3 years. So if the insurance policy you've got gives you a certain amount of cash to keep the business effectively ticking over whilst you're not ticking over, then that's the most common form of business interruption insurance. And typically companies buy it from an indemnity period of 12 months up to 3 years. Yeah. And then we work out by talking to the customer what the appropriate time is. But someone like a golf club, for instance, a loss of profits wouldn't necessarily work for them because most of their income is through fees. So if the golf club, if a jumbo jet landed on the golf club and blew it up, it's not so much the profit element, it's the annual fee. So it's more appropriate for them to insure on a loss of revenue basis.
Yeah, it's quite a good analogy because obviously especially what's happened recently within the pandemic, and I think everybody's had to sit back and relook at things like their insurance and relook at everybody, your own personal responsibilities. But obviously, we did have a brief chat about this beforehand. Obviously, what was the major issues why people could not claim during the pandemic with the insurance policies they currently have?
Yeah, so COVID was obviously a pretty big thing in 2020
Yeah.
and 21. And initially, I think because a lot of customers had business interruption cover, they felt they could make a claim under their insurance. But it became apparent very, very quickly that all the insurance companies, bar none, were turning down the BI claims.
Yeah.
And then the main reason for the insurance companies legitimately turning down the BI claims, it was down to a couple of things, but one of them was the definition of infectious diseases. So COVID-19 was classified as an infectious disease.
Yeah.
When you look in an insurance policy, under the business interruption section, there's various extensions in the small print. And one of the extensions under a BI section is loss of income or loss of profits due to an infectious disease. So people thought, fantastic, we're covered. However, the majority of insurance companies defined what they classed as an infectious disease. Okay. And they defined it as things like SARS, chicken flu, chicken pox.
Yeah.
There was a list. Of course, COVID-19, by the mere fact it didn't even exist, was not one of the list of infectious diseases.
Right.
So they could only claim if one of these specified infectious diseases occurred. It then went on where insurance companies didn't specify what they classed as an infectious disease. It said within the wording, you're only covered if there's an outbreak of an infectious disease at your premises or within a 25-mile radius of your premises. So you had to prove that the outbreak of COVID occurred either at your premises or within a 25-mile radius for you to be able to claim. Yeah. Of course, that wasn't the case.
Very wishy-washy, that, or in terminology as well.
Well, it was a big get-out clause for a lot of insurance companies to kick it out. There was also an extension under the BI section about denial of access. So denial of access cover is things like if there's an explosion at the bottom of your road or a flood or a murder, for example, where the police shut it down. If you can physically not get to your premises to trade for 2 or 3 days, that's a DOA claim, denial of access claim. And people thought, well, COVID, I can't get to them because I've been told to work from home. But of course, COVID wasn't one of the insured perils. You're only insured under the denial of access if there's an outbreak of a fire or a flood. And then there was another thing which complicated it a bit further, in that most BI claims, business interruption claims, can only be claimed on the back of a property damage claim. So, for example, if there's a fire at your premises resulting in business interruption, you can claim. Of course, COVID didn't happen at a premises.
That remit, no.
So for those legitimate reasons, I would say 90 to 95% of businesses and policies were just simply not covered. And it's unfair, perhaps. Yeah. It's unreasonable. It's those bloody insurance companies. But unfortunately, there was an article that came out about 6 months into COVID from Sky News and BBC. I remember it clearly. It said on the news in the morning, great news, all businesses are covered. Yeah. The FCA have taken a lot of the insurance companies to court, and there's been a big overturn.
I've seen that.
So there was a big court case that the FCA held the insurance companies accountable. They were right to some extent, but it only applied to perhaps 4 or 5% of businesses in the UK. And we're talking about small businesses here, like hairdressers perhaps, where there were a handful of insurance companies that hadn't quite got their policy wordings right, and they'd left them quite open, where they were actually allowed to make a valid claim. But we're only talking small claims, 25 grand, 50 grand, not big amounts. And
so from that perspective then, obviously that was big news, but technically it wasn't really big news for 94%, 95% of the businesses around there. I mean, what other insurance support is there now for them kind of businesses? Because I take it the terminology's changed. Yeah, so in the contracts,
under literally every single insurance policy now, the business insurance policies, all insurance policies have exclusions and warranties and conditions in the small print. They've now added an extra exclusion or condition in the policy, which is the COVID-19 exclusion. Right. In other words, if there's an outbreak of COVID-19, you're not covered, and that came in pretty much April, May time, 2020. So the insurance, so going forward, if it happens again, it's clearing your insurance policy.
It's clearing insurance, and obviously because it is an infectious disease, and obviously there's umming and ahhing if it's going to come back or not going to come back. So that then also puts a lot of businesses on a knife edge, where, or a cliff edge, where you're thinking, well, what's going to happen for them going forward? Because I know the government handed out a lot of support for businesses previously. I don't think that will happen again because of the turmoil in regards to how the money was spent by a lot of businesses, because obviously they kept the money to keep afloat as well at the same time. How do you think it would look going forward if anything like that was to happen again, ultimately for businesses? Is it more of a case of, you buy yourself and, go,
I think,
go at it really?
Okay, so it's not so much an insurance thing, more of a business thing. But I think personally, because a lot of businesses have experienced it, a lot of them were able to work from home, and obviously that was new. It's quite commonplace now, working from home. So I would expect a lot of businesses are probably geared up for something like this happening again. But of course, if you're manufacturing from a factory, you can't do that from home.
No, you can't.
COVID itself, COVID-19, is excluded. Hopefully, through the injections and vaccination, etc., hopefully we're all good.
Yeah.
But if there's a COVID-21 or something else, 19, who knows? It's I guess it's something.
Yeah, it's quite difficult.
We hope it doesn't happen. But
no, I understand that.
Yeah.
And so from your business as well, obviously, with you being able to diversify slightly, does that help your business and sustainability for your business? Because obviously, I know a major aspect of your business is business insurance, but obviously you do offer personal insurance as well, and obviously the car insurance. So being able to diversify, does that help you carry on with your business, your cash flow, you moving forward?
So, because every business has business insurance or ought to have it, there's a lot of potential customers for me. I mean, there's a lot. So that's good. And because of the majority of individuals in the UK live in a house and drive a car, then again, hey, there's never going to be a shortage of potential clients. So we just have to be better than the competition, be more competitive in terms of pricing, better in terms of service. We tend to win new clients or secure additional business because of a lack of service from the competitors. So a lot of people do focus on price, particularly businesses. If you're spending upwards of £10,000-20,000 a year on insurance, it's quite a lot. But where businesses say they focus on price, in reality, what I find it's more the service side that is more important for them.
Sometimes a business will go online and they'll say, right, I'm going to go for this insurance policy, and it's £10 cheaper than yours. I'll give you an example.
Exactly.
But in the T's and C's, actually, they're not actually covering off what you will cover off, and that's what they don't see, and they're not going to get that one-to-one.
So when you buy online, let's say, obviously, car and house insurance is very common. That's absolutely fine, and the online comparison sites, they do a good job. When you're a tradesman, for example, and you want to buy public liability insurance for your plumbing business, as an example, you'll go online and put your name and address in, and you'll tick the boxes. And on one of the pages, there'll be a lot of yes/no questions, which people just tend to go tick, 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 yes, because you're not a criminal, you've not been bankrupt, and everything's fantastic. But there's a lot of things that you're answering yes to, just because it's probably right. Now, when the insurance policy is issued, because it's £10 cheaper than us, the insurance company sends you about 5 or 6 documents,
which nobody
reads.
Which
very rarely anyone ever reads.
No.
Some of these documents are very lengthy, and some of them, in fact all of them, have 2 or 3 pages full of endorsements, warranties, exclusions. These are all the small print that insurance companies say, you have told us you do this, you have told us you do this. Therefore,
is that the get-out clause, ultimately?
Yeah. So it is kind of the get-out clause. Now, obviously, when I sell these exact same policies to customers, I go through them specifically and say, you're not covered for this because you've told us you don't do it, therefore you're not covered. And this applies, that applies. We go through it and explain it. Usually everything's good, but occasionally a customer would say, oh, actually, I do that, therefore I can't comply with that condition. So we amend it to be specific and bespoke to that customer.
How big are your competitors locally, and where do you stand in that in that situation?
That's fine. So there are a handful of pretty good insurance brokers based around the Burnley, East Lancs region, across the M65. I've kind of made it my mission to get to know most of these people who run the businesses. So I class them as, some of them are my friends. We're business owners. Particularly the very, very local ones are around the Burnley and Blackburn region. So I do know these businesses. We're not kind of stab each other in the back type of businesses, but obviously, we want to win new business and new clients. There are one or two businesses around the area that, in my opinion, probably let themselves down a bit in terms of service levels.
Okay.
And I'm aware of who they are. And when there's an opportunity to talk to one of their clients, I'd probably place more of an emphasis on it, because I know I've heard stories about service levels perhaps dropping, so I'd be keen to talk to them.
I think from that perspective, one thing I will say is business as well at the same time. But also as well at the same time is, when you're offering that kind of service, obviously you're standing out from the crowd a little bit as well at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's enough customers to go around.
There are,
every business, because the market that you're in. But stepping on each of the toes is not an issue if, for instance, there's enough customers to go around. But if you're offering a better service as well at the same time, and the client buys into you as an individual, not just the product.
So one thing I do find a lot, and this has been the same for the past 10, 15 years, I guess, there's a lot of well-run family-type insurance brokers, maybe 10 or 15 staff, who've grown to a certain level. There's a lot of national insurance brokers, in fact international insurance brokers, who are buying up other businesses. There's quite a big growth spurt with these big nationals. When one of the big nationals buys a smaller company, there's a period of 2 to 3 years where there's kind of a handover, so the existing owners would slowly exit the business. The existing staff would remain there, but because the big boys kind of dictate how things are going to be from now on, what you always find, or very often find, is some of the very, very good staff in that business will just leave because they don't like the new regime. And because the good staff have left, the service levels drop, and that's when I can pick up new business from these brokers that have been bought out by the nationals. So
staff and looking after staff is the key in any business, ultimately. But also, you're never going to get to where you want to get to without obviously having the right team of people around you to grow your business as well at the same time. So if that's what's happening, a lot of customers will be used to an account manager, for instance, and that account manager's gone. They're not getting that service anymore.
Correct.
And as you know, insurance is very accessible. You can go online tomorrow and then buy a new policy tomorrow and get a service from a national corporation. It could be on the other end of the phone 24/7 for you.
Exactly. When I'm talking to another customer, potential client for me, they don't tend to refer to the insurance broker, the business that they're using. They tend to refer to the individual that they're dealing with. That's where the relationship is. And if that individual leaves or retires or gets out of insurance, and the new person they're dealing with isn't their cup of tea, then there's a great opportunity for me to get in there.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And people buy people as well. And obviously that's the one-to-one experience that you offer. Ultimately. So what are the future plans for the business, and where is it going to go, and where we're going to be in 10 years' time?
Of course. Well, I'll be on the beach in 10 years' time.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully. So when I took the business on 2.5, 3 years ago, it was quite a small business. In the first year, even though it was 2020, it was the COVID year, I grew it by around about 30 or 40% in the first year. And then in my second year of owning the business, it might sound a bit confident maybe, but we actually doubled it. In fact, we took it to 120%. The business is at 120% the size of it was when I took it on. And then this year we've added 30% onto that. So there's some pretty ambitious growth plans in place, which we've achieved. For the next 3 or 4 years, I've got growth targets. Working out how I was going to hit those has been quite difficult. But there is a plan in place. But there's a level I need to get to, in my mind, for the business to be what I want it to be. we're never going to be a big national, we're not going to compete with the big UK brokers, but we want to be one of the main established brokers in the East Lancs or Lancashire region.
Yeah.
And we're getting there slowly.
I think you, as a business owner, you have to have that positive mindset,
Yeah.
because you need to have a growth strategy first and foremost, but you need to also have a goal. Now, if you have a goal that you think you're very, very happy with, and you push 110% above that goal, if you reach 85% of that goal, then you've still done really, really well as a business owner.
Yeah, I like 110% rather than
85%
doesn't cut it, but yeah.
There's always failure in business.
Yeah.
It's things you do fail at, but you're successful as well at the same
Yeah.
time. So with failure comes success. I'm a big believer in that. But also, from your perspective, what's pushing you to the next level, to get your business to the next level? What have you done differently? Have you introduced technology? Have you introduced certain routines within the business, or have you just, a little bit we touched on, is changed the model, ultimately flipped that on its head?
Yeah, I mean, we flipped the business mainly from a personal lines, that's car and house insurance, to a commercial lines business. We still do a lot of the car and house insurance. That just hasn't grown so much, whereas the commercial side has. In terms of technology, the actual software systems, IT, back office kind of stuff, I have completely changed the software we're using, which makes it more amenable to what we do.
Yeah.
There's costs involved in that, but the whole operation is a lot slicker. There's not so much time wasted on... There's a lot of processes that the previous business did, which took an awful lot of time, whereas something that took 2 or 3 hours we can do in 5 minutes now.
And
so
it's about embracing technology really as well at the same time, because we see it a lot of the time, because obviously we do with businesses and we speak to business owners, and a business might have been around for 20 years and they've got the same systems and processes, but something's the new kid on the block at the minute, which is can do that job in 10 minutes instead of 3 hours ultimately.
So one thing I'm very much aware of, the individuals that own businesses 20, 30 years ago have either retired or are of a retirement age, and a kind of old school mentality perhaps. But people in the 60s and 70s aren't necessarily the future of my business.
No.
Whereas business owners in their 20s and 30s probably are.
Yeah.
Individuals in the 20s and 30s spend an awful lot of time on this thing called a phone and they have apps. So it's possible, of course, to buy insurance through your app, through the technology. And if I'm not aware of that, or I don't embrace it, or at least if I'm not keeping up to speed with that type of technology, I'd very much fall behind. So it's not so much that we do it, but we're aware of it, and I'm aware at the stage where we need to jump in.
Yeah.
If we just continue doing the things the way things have always been done, you're never going to progress.
No.
So I have to be aware of...
And a business evolves.
Of course.
Every day, ultimately. So what advice would you have for any business owner if you was to start over again?
If I was to start over again?
Yeah. What advice would you have for... If you could start afresh tomorrow with what you've been through within your business, what advice would you give any business owner?
Okay, so things that you don't particularly enjoy doing that you want to put off, don't put them off, because they're not going to go away. Okay. Do them. And if that means working until midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sorry, but you've got to do it. Yeah. It's late nights. Yeah. It happens.
Things need to be done in a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, from a personal point of view, I've always been a fairly sort of chilled guy, fairly relaxed. And there have been a lot of pressures since I've owned the business, but I've tried not to let the pressures get to me, because if you're dealing with pressure and stress and all that other nonsense and stuff, it doesn't do well in the business. So I try to remain pretty relaxed, and I know that in every single business, every business I talk to, including my business, you have some fantastically good months and you have some bloody awful months.
Without a doubt.
You very rarely have in between. Yeah. But just be aware that when you're having the bad months, the good months will come, I promise you. I promise you. Yeah. But when you're riding high, just be aware there's in 2 or 3 months' time you're going to have a bad month.
It's like the heart monitor analogy, because that is business. It goes up and down all the time, and it's just riding the wave on a good month ultimately. Make sure you survive.
If you're good at what you do, provide a good service. I'd say service more than anything else. Get back to people on time, all this kind of stuff. deal with things when they need dealing with, don't put them off, and I am quite bad at that, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
It ain't a 9 to 5 job.
No.
It's a Monday to Sunday night job.
Yeah.
And believe me, it is.
And is there anything that you would do differently, or you would have done differently? In hindsight,
There probably is. I just can't think what it is offhand. I tell you what, the one thing. So I'm 54 now.
Yeah.
I bought the business when I was kind of 51, I think. I wish I'd done it 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
I wish I was. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the opportunity 10 years ago, but I wish I'd had the balls to do it 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think a lot. Going from employed and having a sustainable income coming in every month and reliable income, and then you don't have to do anything apart from do your job to earn that money, going to running your own business and having to fight every day to make sure you got enough money coming in to cover your overheads, your staff's overheads, and making a profit is two different things ultimately within business.
It is.
And you wake up every morning and you every morning you have to go and generate new business.
Yeah,
you need to get a new business.
Yeah,
so,
but it's I love that challenge.
Oh, that.
I always say the best day of the week for me is Monday morning. I can't wait to get in and crack on. And Sunday nights, a lot of people dread Sunday nights. I love them. The sooner you can wake up on the Monday morning, there's a new week and a new challenge ahead. And I mean that.
And I think that's, as a business owner, it's a breath of fresh air speaking to you and listening to how your positiveness is, and you need that positivity within a business and a business owner to carry that. I think otherwise, if you take on all the negatives what happen in a business, because they do, but sometimes you've got to take them on board and actually turn them into a positive.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not always easy to do that, but you've got to have that positive mindset, and your goals have to be looking forward to what you can achieve ultimately.
Well, we'll get there. We will. It'll happen.
Definitely, without a doubt.
All right.
So thank you today for Stuart spending his time with ourselves at Margins Insurance. Stuart, do you want to just give us a little bit about information about yourself and how we could get hold of yourself if we need to contact you for insurance purposes?
Yeah, so the business is Margins Insurance.
Yeah.
Just Google it. We're there, marginsinsurance.co.uk. I'm on the homepage. The numbers are on there, the phone numbers, the email addresses. It's quite simple. Just Google it.
Fantastic.
People can have access to my mobile number. I'm not going to give it on here, but it's easy to find it.
So the word is contact Margins Insurance for your business insurance needs.
LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You'll see me on there.
Perfect. Thank you.